Hello everyone, my name is Zan. I work at Pusher as a developer evangelist, and today I would like to present you the state of Kotlin. Precisely, I'm going to present you the results of a survey that I've been running for the past 3 months that a bunch of you probably saw or even filled in. Actually, let's do a show of hands. Who filled in the State of Kotlin survey? About half. That's good. Thank you, everyone who contributed, who took their time to do it. So yeah, we'll be looking at where we are at the moment in the Kotlin ecosystem. And yeah, so I work at Pusher, which is where we're hosting you today. And Kotlin is used for all new Android SDK development here. That's in products such as ChatKit, push notifications, and feeds. I played quite a large part to put it in there as the original Android enthusiast. So yeah, my background is Android development. I moved into SDK development, and currently I'm doing surveys. Jokes aside, I love Kotlin. Kotlin is, I think it's a great language, and more developers I spoke to, they basically share the opinion that it makes us happy. I don't know why, but it does. So yeah, with this survey, I wanted to learn. I wanted us to learn about the Kotlin ecosystem because no one's ever done it. So we didn't really have a comprehensive view of what the ecosystem is. I also want to produce something that can be used to promote Kotlin as a language that can be used by the community. So something that you can take to your team and try to convince them that Kotlin is maybe the way to go if you're doing Android applications, if you're doing native applications, if you're doing any web stuff, anything. And yeah, give back to the community. My dear wish was that we get 1,000 responses to the survey. So yeah, started in December. Started putting the questions together with a lot of help from the community. I've gone through several iterations to kind of put the survey into the shape that was then released to the public. And mid-January to mid-March, it was live, it was running. We were doing some promotion to get more and more people involved. We even offered a prize, which was a trip to KOTLIN-Conf, the premier conference for Kotlin developers. This year is going to be in October in Amsterdam. And the prize was essentially trip to Amsterdam with flights, hotel, and ticket to the conference. And we did a prize draw at the end. It was completely random, and anyone who filled in the survey, left their email, and wasn't a Pusher employee or their close family member is pretty much eligible to win it. And it was won by a person called Nikola Cirilovic from Croatia. So if you're watching, Nikola, congratulations again. There was an applause. Awesome. So let's go on. So I was hoping for 1,000 responses. We got almost 3,000, which is scary and also super exciting. It's also 10% off State of JS, which is probably one of the biggest state of kind of surveys going out there. 33% of people who landed on the survey actually completed it, which my fellow marketeers also tell me it's quite a good ratio. And on average, they took 13 minutes and 14 seconds of their time to complete it. Doing some maths, it also means that people have spent 25 days filling the survey. So yeah, thank you so much. The categories we surveyed were how Kotlin is being used, how people learn Kotlin, what are some of the favorite features and how they are used, and also Kotlin ZEITGEIST, which was an experiment I did to kind of grab more open-ended questions, open-ended answers to questions. And lastly, I checked about demographics. So yeah, without further ado, I would like to present you the state of Kotlin in early 2018. Let's look at the usage first. 58% of people currently use Kotlin on a project. It's quite remarkable. People who don't use it currently on a project, they've maybe used it for learning or playing around. That's like 17% of those. And 13% of surveyed people say they have no plans and they haven't used it so far. Among the rest, there are people who plan to start using it, or who used it in the past, or who had only evaluated Kotlin as a potential language to make their software in. People use Kotlin mostly in both work and personal projects, out of the people who use it on a project anyway. So that's 66% of people surveyed. Apart from that, there are about 18% each only doing work or side projects. Out of curiosity, how many of you are Android developers? That's about right. A lot of hands went up. Because according to the survey, 80% of people use Kotlin to build Android applications. It doesn't surprise me at all, because it's very popular in Android. And the ecosystem has been stuck with quite an old version of Java for a very long time. So yeah, out of the work projects, and to be honest, this graph is pretty much the same for side projects. 80% use it for Android development, and about 31% each use it for also server-side or SDK development. There's a few others who use it for other type of things. And yeah, surprisingly, the side projects, they don't really differ. Like it's pretty much the same distribution here. Among other things, people use it for scripting, and obviously also experiments and just learning and playing around. And I was also surprised to see data science there. Several people have mentioned that they use Kotlin to do some data sciencey things, which is pretty cool. Next thing that I checked was what's the percentage of people who have kind of Kotlin as their projects only made in Kotlin. So, and compare that to like people who said they use it in side projects and people who use it in their work projects. And the distribution is as seen. So 55% have 100% Kotlin projects in their side projects. So they're like, if you're doing something on the side, they're probably smaller, more experimental things, and like a lot more people are more comfortable just having full-on Kotlin there, versus 25% for people who have it in their work projects, which is also quite a nice number. I guess Pusher is amongst those 25%. Yeah, so in work projects, you see 25, and then about 15 to 20% in other kind of distributions. So 75 to 100, 50% to 75, and so on. 1.4% people said that they only use Kotlin in test in their work projects. In their side projects, the distribution is quite different, because you see that it's heavily skewed towards full-on Kotlin, or 75 to 100% Kotlin. In Android, I think the 25%-ish is probably XML for views. Yeah, and a lot less people use it for tests on Android, apparently. Okay, other programming languages, because it's usually not the only programming language that you work with. No surprise here, Java is massive because it's kind of the older cousin of Kotlin anyway. And so is Swift, which is the super similar but not quite counterpart on iOS. JavaScript and Node are just big, so that's why they were quite often mentioned. And lastly, there was Python. I was quite surprised to see Python there so prevalent. I'm not sure whether it's related to the data science or it's just people who do Django and Flask and other things, or even scripting. But yeah, these are the few most popular other programming languages for Kotlin developers. Another interesting feature of Kotlin is how close it is to Java and how easy it is to migrate Java code to Kotlin. So we looked at how many people decided to do this conversion. So 87% of people migrated some Java code to Kotlin. It also means that 13% of people didn't do that. Maybe they just started out writing Kotlin directly. Maybe they just created new classes in Kotlin. I don't know. And yeah, those people who had done the migration, vast majority used the wizard to convert individual classes, 66%. 56% of people did the conversion manually. And 47 decided to convert only snippets. By that I mean Android Studio and IntelliJ allow you to, if you copy Java code, automatically convert that into Kotlin if you copy it into Kotlin file, which is pretty cool. There's also 10% of brave souls who decided it's a good idea to convert the entire project. And 20% of all of people who done the migration decided it was a bad idea. I imagine it went something like this. So yeah, I asked about the reasons. Dependencies were a big reason why the migration didn't go as planned. So was reflection. A couple of names popped up. On Android, it's Dagger, it's Green DAO, it's Realm. There may be some tricks involved to getting this migrated correctly. In the early days, it was also Spring. And we can't just look at technical reasons, because there's also the organizational reasons. There might be corporate policy at play that prevents you from just migrating to a completely new programming language. So yeah, these are quotes. If you see slides like these, it means that they are direct quotes that I've taken from open-ended questions. So someone was made to revert it due to organizational rules. Or another team took the code and they didn't want Kotlin. Sad. On a more technical side, migration triggered a number of changes in the Java code, especially when you have a bunch of statics and it kind of breaks your API. This is what can happen. It's also that the wizard migration does not provide idiomatic Kotlin, and it puts a lot of null assertions, which can be considered code smells, which means that you might want to rethink this and do some conversion manually as opposed to using the wizard. So yeah, that was usage of Kotlin. Moving on, I decided to look at how people decide to learn Kotlin, what they use and when do they learn it. So what's interesting is that this is a pretty much hockey stick graph. It started in 2011 with very, very small amounts. So only 0.1% of people picked it up in 2011 and exploded in mid-2017 after Google I/O, when Google obviously announced that Kotlin is now officially supported language for Android applications. So 46% of all people surveyed said that they started using Kotlin after Google I/O. Another important spike was in 2015. I can only speculate, but there was also the time when Jake Wharton, a very famous Android developer, used to work at Square, now he's at Google, released a white paper, originally internally at Square and then publicized it. It was basically an evaluation of Kotlin as a programming language that Square can pick up. And it was released as a Google Doc and it obviously exploded. There was also a bunch of talks starting in 2015, so that's probably what helped the explosion of Kotlin in popularity. So yeah, reasons why people started learning it. Google supported Kotlin officially on Android. It's definitely a big one. So is JetBrains. So big companies like that, big respectable companies, when people see it, that's kind of their idea to just kind of believe and trust those companies. Tooling is also important. Luckily, Kotlin has JetBrains behind them, which are, in my opinion, the best IDE makers in the world. So tooling is there. And then there's community. I already mentioned Jake Wharton, and there's also Christina Lee and Antonio Leyva and a lot of others who, especially in the Android space, helped to popularize Kotlin. And on the JetBrains side, there is Hadi Hariri, Svetlana Isakova, and Andrei Breslov, and many others who also did the same thing. One person who answered the survey also said they were introduced to Kotlin by their friend Leo. So Leo, if you're watching, thank you. You're a good person. So yeah, among other quotes and reasons why people picked it up is the popularity of Kotlin in a short period of time. We've seen the hockey stick graph. It's really astonishing. Java was very verbose, and Kotlin is just love and happiness, I guess. I think that was like Java being Java was one of the biggest, most often repeated reasons why Kotlin is so popular. So, for instance, this one, it's like Java++, although I don't know what to think about this. So yeah, the resources that people use to learn. No surprise, kotlinlang.org, the official website, is almost 90% of people use this to learn Kotlin. And followed by different talks at conferences and resources like Kotlin Cones. The most prevalent community-supported projects are, I would say, Kotlin Weekly, which is a newsletter, which Pusher has been sponsoring for the last couple of months. And the Kotlin for Android developers. It's a book by Antonio Leyva. It's been around for a while. He published it on LeanPub, I think, at first, and then it's been quite popular. And then, yeah, different blogs, different courses. I would also like to pay attention to the Kotlin Academy, which is a publication on Medium. Currently, it's had 4.8% of respondents say they kind of picked it up they learned Kotlin from it, but I think given that they're producing so many great pieces of content, it's going to be a lot more prevalent in the following iterations. So yeah, developers who learn Kotlin come from different backgrounds, mostly Java and Android, unsurprisingly, but also front-end, back-end, desktop development, other mobile. They may come from Swift. Maybe Swift developers decided to, hey, they have a cool thing on Android as well. Let's pick this up. Yeah, 3.8% of people decided, hey, I'm just gonna learn Kotlin from scratch, which is great. I want to see what this changes to in the following years. So yeah, this was where people come from, how people learn, and what people used to learn. But let's talk about the features, because it's got some pretty amazing features. Null safety is by far the most favored one. So 80% of people say they love null safety. This was a multiple choice question, so people could say they love all of them. I try to encourage them to pick only 3. Following null safety, you've got extension functions, Java interop, and data classes, which are favored by 60-something% of people. Then followed by higher order functions and type inference, about 40-ish something. And lastly, you've got the newer features like multi-platform support and coroutines, which have been introduced in the later versions of Kotlin at 20-something%, 24 to be precise. Among other favorite features, you've got the when keyword, you've got the reified keyword, and you've got silt classes and lambdas that popped up often during the comments. There was also a blooper in the original iteration of the survey. I must have come from the screening of The Last Jedi and then writing the questions, because I confused higher order functions with first order functions. And if you follow Star Wars, first order are the baddies of the new trilogy. So yeah, a bit of a blooper. So yeah, if we look at the breakdown of different features of Kotlin, 77% said that they've used extension functions. Extensions are you can easily add what would otherwise have to be static utility classes, static utility methods in Java to existing classes. They're used to reduce Android boilerplate. They're used to kind of replace utility classes, as I just mentioned. A lot of people mention conversions, so strings, object, things they get from APIs, they just can convert them, and DSLs. What people say about them, we felt like going overboard with them, now trying to find a happy medium. They're not the best thing, but because they can easily be abused and overused. The most important use case is lambda parameters for DSL style builders. And for clean code, because they make the code more readable, because you can just name different things on things like strings, integers, any given object, you can just call them different. On the other side, you have coroutines introduced more recently, and only 29% of people have used them. Mostly for threading and any I/O, UI-based operations, and also as a replacement for RxJava. RxJava is the reactive extensions for Java. It's the library that brings us observables and the reactive paradigm. But most people on Android mostly use it for simplified threading and scheduling things on different threads. So coroutines, because they're just that, are probably going to be taking a bit of limelight from Java, RxJava in that sense. There's also a bunch of people who said they come from the C# background and they've missed the async and await keywords, so they've used that. So yeah, some people also say I've used it with Arrow because they use it for comprehensions. I've got Paco over there in the audience, who's one of the main contributors to Arrow. If you have any Arrow questions, please ask him. Someone said they stopped using coroutines because they are experimental. Fair enough, they actually are. And someone used them fully in production for a fintech solution. Any Monzo developers here? No. Okay, they also provide a very funny API when used to wrap JS promises. I have no idea what this means. Another popular thing in Kotlin are the non-JVM features, being able to target other platforms, 26%, out of which 15% are excited about Kotlin native, so the native compilation target for Kotlin. There's going to be possibility for doing writing Kotlin to be executed on iOS and native as well. Kotlin.js with 11%, and lastly, multi-platform Kotlin with 7% of usage. Outside of features, I also asked about build tools. So what do people use to build Kotlin projects? No surprise here again. Android Studio is with 75% clearly in the lead, followed by IntelliJ at 65 and Gradle at 62. They're all used for Android development, so no surprise here. I was quite surprised and disappointed why Cobalt, the native Kotlin build system, is only used by 1.1% of people. Honestly, I haven't used it, so it shouldn't surprise me that much, but yeah. Other tools included Bazel and Griffin, and also Buck. Apparently there is support for Buck as well for Kotlin. 41% have used a DSL in Kotlin. Prevalent is Enco with 23%. Enco is the UI declaration library for Android. Actually, it's 24%. Kotlin Gradle, the ability to write Gradle plugins in Kotlin, is another one with about 17%. And lastly, you've got Kotlin x.html, the DOM manipulation DSL, with 5.6. Among the others, they're mostly homegrown DSLs, because 24% have actually developed a DSL themselves. What for? It's mostly used for, a lot of people have mentioned Jake Wharton's, again Jake, this is getting boring. Jake Wharton's Testing Robots. It's a blog that he wrote about nicer testing on Android by writing a DSL. A lot of people write UI declarations and custom data structures, DSLs, but there's so many use cases from banks to AI to all of that, so people have mentioned pretty much everything. I was really interested in this actually. It's you've probably seen that a lot of libraries are replacing C's with K's, so there was category which was spelled with a K. There is inject with a K again. So I asked, like, what do you think about this? Do you like it? Do you not? Most people are indifferent, but 32% of people say that it should be compulsory. And 10% of people say that KDE did it 2 decades ago. But not everyone is so enthused. The survey started with a button saying comments with a K, so someone didn't like it. Classic Dylan. So yeah, that's enough for features. Let's look at the zeitgeist, what people actually think about Kotlin. What do they miss? What do they like? 29% of people say they are missing things in Kotlin. Most dearly missed is the ternary operator, at least for the server itself. SAM for Kotlin classes is also a big one. And yeah, there is, like, a lot of people miss new things all the time. Syntax sugar. Someone missed link, so it must be all the C# developers out there. Apparently, I've heard there is actually an alternative to link in Kotlin, but I'm not aware of it. It's interesting because a lot of people who filled in the JetBrains survey called Kotlin Future Features, they asked for collection literals, and they weren't that often mentioned in my survey. So yeah, more things that are missed. So custom operations, support for Vue, a single multi-platform IDE. I think the IntelliJ does it for up to an extent. And there's also Swift's guard statement. So like all the iOS transplants would be missing the guard statements from Swift. 21% of people don't like certain features in Kotlin. They don't like companion objects because the way it does this kind of interacts or kind of counteracts statics in Java. Some people don't like it's all public by default, even though it's also quite immutable by default. Someone says it's not a dynamic language. Not sure what to think about this, but yeah. What is the best ones though? What people like? They like the features. They like the null safety. They like the coroutines. They like the Java interoperability. They also like it's a modern programming language akin to Swift, TypeScript, and others. They like it's not a Java. They like it's fun, pun intended, because functions in Kotlin start with a fun, are declared with a fun. And platform independence was quite often mentioned. Obviously, it's also a very functional friendly programming language, so that was quite frequently mentioned too. My favorite quotes about this was, "It can be read like a story." I think that's just nice. And another one, "I smile again when writing code." That's just poetic, isn't it? And the language does not get in the way of getting a job done. It's pretty cool. And my favorite one actually is Mortal Kombat, the programming language. I'm not sure whether that means the arcade version was better than the home console ones, but yeah, I'm honestly, if anyone has any ideas, I'd like to learn what that meant. So yeah, that's the Kotlin Zeitgeist. And lastly, we've got the demographics. We learned that Kotliners live everywhere, on Earth that is. We haven't detected anyone coming in from outer space yet. Most of the surveyed people are employed or in being students, but there's also others like CEOs, startup founders, interns, all sorts. How long have people been working as developers? I think this is a pretty standard distribution, honestly. When we release the report, we're gonna compare this with the Stack Overflow one, just to see how this all stacks against each other. Number of people in your organization has, there is a big spike with 10 to 50 people and quite a large spike with the freelance. But nothing scary. There is quite a uniform distribution across the other size of companies. So imagine the 10 to 50 people are like small agencies, startups that are quite eager to try out new things, quite flexible to move quickly. And how many developers are in the organizations? A big spike at 2 to 5 developers. It probably means Android teams working on Kotlin. That's my hunch, because that's kind of the size of an Android team. 3.7% of people have more than 50 Kotlin developers in their orgs. So Google, JetBrains, the likes. Sectors, no surprise here. Tech is leading the charge, and pretty uniform distribution unless you're working in government or insurance. So yeah, that was the demographics. And I would like to ask you, what do you think about the future of Kotlin and the future of state of Kotlin? If you have any questions that you would like to see asked in the future iterations, because there will be more, what would they be? Get in touch, please, and let me know, and we can make this a great experience and use this to kind of just grow the Kotlin community further. That was State of Kotlin, and I am Zan Markan. Thank you.